Emmanuel Macron, encouraging him to help Tehran normalize economic ties with other countries. Asiya?
Jim Spellman, thank you. Well, let's get more insight into all this with my colleague, Gas in Beijing, and Afshin Shahi, joining us from the UK. He's a senior lecturer in international relations at the University of Bradford. And Afshin, let me begin with you. Initially, this was supposed to be a European-led mission led by the UK. Clearly, that is not the case anymore. What changed and why?
I think it would be extremely reductionist to analyze this in the context of the so-called special relations between the UK and the United States. Only a few weeks ago, under the leadership of Theresa May, Britain made it categorically clear that they are not interested to join this US-led coalition in the Persian Gulf. So what we see at the moment is something very specific about the government of Mr. Johnson, who is extremely keen to get closer and closer to Washington with the hope to secure a fantastic trade deal after Brexit. But to what extent this gamble can pay off, I mean, it is still, a huge question. But what we see at the moment, to a very large extent, is connected to the ambitions of Mr. Johnson to secure a major trade deal, even if he has to sacrifice JCPOA, which has been one of the most important foreign policy priority, both for Britain and the wider European Union over the last 5 years.
Now, thanks, Dr. Shahi, for joining us. Now, despite UK's decision, the US is still struggling to get countries on board. EU states, for instance, Germany and France, appear reluctant. But now that Britain says it's joining, do you think they can be persuaded to join as well?
It is extremely unlikely. Over the last few weeks, effectively most of the important European players, including Germany and France, made it very clear that they are not interested to join this American-led coalition in the Persian Gulf. Both the French authorities and the German authorities assume that probably this kind of new coalition in the Persian Gulf is going to be part of a wider campaign to put more pressure on Iran. And the European side are extremely concerned about the future of JCPOA. They believe that actually further pressure from the United States and its allies can significantly jeopardize JCPOA. And as far as the Europeans are concerned, this is the matter of kind of international security, and they're taking it extremely seriously. So anything which would jeopardize that deal is extremely problematic, and they're not going to embrace it, and they're not going to take any part in it, as far as I'm concerned.
Afshin, how concerned are you that these maritime patrols could actually escalate the situation in the Persian Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz, even more?
I mean, if you do look at kind of the narrowest part of Strait of Hormuz, we're talking about 25 miles. This is extremely narrow. So further securitization, further militarization undoubtedly is going to increase the chances of miscalculations, mistakes, and accidents. I mean, even if this kind of new military coalition is not intending to escalate tensions, but given kind of the prevailing factors in these kind of extremely dangerous waters, further kind of militarization and further securitization undoubtedly can increase the chances of accidents, which could spark a major conflict in the region. Sometimes even the smallest accident, the smallest miscalculation can start a kind of major confrontation, which would not only affect Iran, but it also would affect the region, and I would say the wider world at large, given the economic and political and the geostrategic significance of Strait of Hormuz for the world economy.
Now, Dr. Shahi, given your expertise, do you think the UK's decision to join the Gulf mission raises perhaps concerns about its commitment to the Iran nuclear deal?
You know, the very same day that Boris Johnson made it to number 10 Downing Street, a Conservative MP publicly said that now there is a possibility for Britain to formally kind of exit JCPOA. Theoretically, the United Kingdom kind of asserts that they are still committed to the deal. But if we look at what has been happening over the last 4 or 5 weeks, we see that actually the British position is increasingly getting closer and closer to Washington, which potentially can create kind of the right context for a kind of formal exit strategy. At the moment, the most important kind of policy for Mr. Johnson is to secure a very attractive trade deal after 31st of October 2019. So even if he has to sacrifice JCPOA, probably as far as he's concerned and his governments are concerned, this is a good enough price to secure that ultimate prize.
All right, thanks, Dr. Shahi, for those perspectives. And thanks, RCA. I'll speak to you soon. Let's go for a short break.